So, River of Gods is one of the science fiction novels one of my favorite science fiction novels, and that's because for the first time there was a whole novel length treatment about India in the future, and the way it began, Happy Birthday India. It was excellent because it is set in the India of 2047, and the world of India 2047 in the River of Gods and its follow-up collection Cyberabad Days, the India is it's been balkanized, right? It's like super federated. Bharat is now one of the states of India which is fighting over a dam with its neighboring state Awadh. Meanwhile, the state of Bengal is towing an iceberg from the Antarctic because the monsoons have failed and they want to create rain and provide for water. The old traditions still remain, but you have the Krishna cops which are running around trying to put rogue AIs out of action, very Blade Runner style. One thing that hasn't changed is our love for soap operas. So there's Town and Country, a soap opera with AI actors, and everybody's just hooked onto it. Of course, there's the rise of nationalism, and there's a far right leader who is sort of manipulating the media. And there's a lot of things going on here. So my first question to you is with all those things, and the world felt so lived in, and with all these little things, what are the things that, I mean, that was 15 years ago when you wrote it. 15 years from then, what are the things that you pat yourself on the back for getting it right?
Ooh, that's you're asking me to be immodest here and kind of say, yeah. It's a funny book actually because I can't really remember much about it because it's a long time ago and I've written quite a lot in between. I, quite a lot of Indian commentators and reviewers have talked about the balkanization of India. The reason I did that was I wanted there to be a water war. I had a few big themes that I wanted to address. There are two theories of science fiction. One is that you take one idea, one change, and you explore it. Uh, um, and you follow that idea through all its implications until it becomes a reductio ad absurdum. And the other one is that you imagine a future, and the future everything has changed, not just one thing. And I prefer the second type of science fiction where everything has changed. So I had a few pointers I wanted to hit. One was climate change, and I'd heard about the monsoon failures and uh, glacial meltwater kind of retreating, and that was one of the key things I wanted to address. So I wanted to have a water war. So I did to India what happened in Russia. The Soviet Union, where all of a sudden, for no apparent reason and very, very quickly, a major superpower collapsed almost overnight and broke apart. It was kind of like the tide went out and revealed all these other countries which had been part of the Soviet Union and now were states in their own right. The Stans, Estonia, the Baltic states. Um, and that seemed to be an exciting thing to do for India, which historically, going back, countries are complicated places. They change shape, they change form, they expand, they contract, they break into separate states. And to me, a nation state is always a temporary thing. And it interests me what happens when nation states break up and new states emerge. So that's one I actually didn't get. That hasn't happened yet, but certainly the climate change aspect, um, that's happening to everyone right now. We got an example of it last night. We got rained out. Congratulations to the staff rebuilding the whole thing so quickly. An amazing job, guys. So I feel that's one bit that I kind of got right. When I started the book, I saw an interesting technological changes going on in India. And at the time I started researching it, which was way back, Uh, the joke in the West was that call centers in India and everyone would be working in a call center, and I kind of wanted to go beyond that and say, okay, what do all these talented, educated people? What can they really do with technology? And I was very interested in kind of high tech states with an educated population, developing software, developing coding, becoming, in a sense, a technological major power. That was the kind of future I wanted to push towards. I think maybe I got that bit right as well. There's just so much in the book I can't remember what was going on.
And there was the whole bit about the neutral gender.
Oh,
That was also exciting. I mean, how did you come up with that? So, in the world of the River of Gods, there's a neutral gender. People who voluntarily become neutral gender, and they're called yits.
yes,
YT.
YT.
YT. That's the pronoun. It is sort of after about 25, 30 times you see it in the book, you sort of grows on you. I
Yeah.
mean, how did that come about?
I've always been interested in third, fourth, and fifth sexes. My wife, Enid, worked in the South Pacific in Tonga for many years, where they have a third sex known as fakuletes, who are boys who are brought up as girls. And she told me about this, and I got interested in the whole area of hijras and third sexes in India. And as science fiction writers do, you take something and you push it to the absolute limits. So I have the newts, the third gender, who are neither male nor female, but something else entirely. Hence, they call themselves its. And the genders they have is so very different that literally, to get the gender reassignment, they are taken apart in a tank and put back together again in a new form. I found, and I kind of loved the character actually. I've forgotten his name. But I love it because his, I say his, yeah, its name, because it was kind of vulnerable and brave at the same time, and had undergone a massive change that none of us, very few of us, would contemplate. So I was excited to see in India about third sex recognition for hijras as well. I thought, yeah, maybe, yeah, maybe I was kind of looking in the right direction for that. There's an awful lot wrong with the book as well. So, because science fiction isn't about the future, it's about a future or a world or just a way of thinking.
Yeah, so much for India becoming taking on China and becoming a superpower. If it gets balkanized into this little stage, I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. Now, in the book, the primary theater of action is the north,
Yeah.
and there's a bit in Goa, and there's a little bit happening in the coastal South Indian village,
Yep,
and all.
yep.
So, when you were writing it, what's happening in South India? I mean, I'm from Bangalore, so I mean, I'm a Bangalorean now for all practical purposes. So, what's happening in Bangalore, and what are the southern states up to? I mean, the Awadh is fighting Bharat and all of that, but what are we doing?
There are hints in the book that stuff is going on in the south. There's the Marathi Confederation, which is kind of mentioned, which I think is a large federation of kind of small southern states. I think my implication is that the south is much wealthier, and in a sense much more powerful and much more peaceful, and that's much less interesting to write about as a writer.
So yeah, so blame yourself for being nice and
Yeah,
cultured and
yeah,
educated,
yeah.
and so boring nobody will write
Yeah,
about you.
yeah, yes, lovely, educated, and boring. Boring is good.
Yeah, but then on the other hand, that makes a good case for those who know about it, the USDR, the United
Oh yes, yes.
Southern Democratic Republics.
Yeah,
If you're on Twitter and on certain WhatsApp groups, you'll know what USDR is.
yeah. I've heard a bit about this actually. I'm a big fan of theoretical potential states. There's one in the USA, a theoretical state called the Republic of Cascadia, which takes in Southern California, Oregon, Washington State, and British Columbia. Because it's one big ecological zone, it's one big cultural zone as well. Um, that sounds my kind of country. And I kind of like the idea of a secession between southern India and northern India. That people here get fed up paying money to the north and the north spending it in bad ways. This can go two ways. It can be very, very good or very, very bad. Um, there are examples of states separating peacefully. Czechoslovakia broke quite happily what they call the velvet divorce, which is a lovely expression, the velvet divorce.
The Velvet Revolution and then the Velvet
The
Divorce.
velvet divorce, yes, and separated into the Czech Republic and Slovakia, two quite economically different countries. Belgium is in a very slow process of breaking up as well, except they can't quite decide how to do it. I think eventually everyone will just get so fed up that Belgium will, by default, become two separate countries. That's the good way to do it. Then there is the bad way to do it, which is what's happening in Spain, in Catalonia, with Catalan separatism. What happens is the Spanish government arrests all the all the politicians and agitators are now serving long jail sentences. How is that going to improve the situation? Not at all. What was that?
Scotland. It's closer home.
Well, I live in Northern Ireland, man. You know, we're kind of we're kind of facing a velvet reunification, possibly after Brexit. But it's 10:45 in the morning, and I've mentioned Brexit already. That's a bad thing, but yeah, but but certainly, yeah. As I say, breakups can be good or breakups can be bad.
So we still have 28 years to go
Yeah.
for India 2047. So if you had to sort of recast River of Gods today, right? Seeing, I mean, so many things you've gotten it right, some things you might want to tweak. What are those few things that you'd just sort of do a course correction on?
Well, if I was redoing River of Gods today, I wouldn't do it because I'm not the guy to do it anymore. I was hardly the guy to do it back in 1999 when I first pitched the book. But I only did it because in the West we'd never seen a big book about future India. Because because science fiction is so USA dominated, when they think about Asia, they think about China, they think about Japan, they never think about South Asia. And I'd never seen that book, and with great self-possession, thought, well, I'm the guy to write that book. Maybe, I mean, I might have been then. I don't think I am now because there are stronger voices, probably better writers than me in India right now, who are the guys who could write that book.
Yeah, I mean, two, three of them are
Yeah,
right there in the audience. Shout out to Sukanya Venkatragana, Indra Das, and Sadhna Shankar.
Support your local science fiction
Yeah.
writers. Yeah,
So,
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think all I did was point Western attention towards what was going on in India, and that was really all I wanted to do.
I'm glad. I'm glad you
thank you,
did
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I'm glad you did that because it
Yeah.
sort of spurred a lot of things. And if nothing, that was I mean, I loved reading it, and it was a science fiction novel which came with a soundtrack.
Yeah.
So there was if you read The River of Gods, right at the back, there's an official soundtrack with the Asian Dub Foundation and A.R. Rahman and all of those.
Talvin Singh, yeah.
Yeah, Talvin Singh, and were all of these things that were blasting into your headphone while you were writing it.
Yeah, and the weird thing was, when I was having breakfast this morning on the hotel soundtrack, there were bits of the River of God soundtrack playing over breakfast, and that was eerie.
That's not eerie. In India, we'd call it a good omen, an auspicious sign.
Okay, yeah. It was just. I remember that. I remember writing a section to this piece of music. Very strange. Yeah, the soundtrack, of course, is very 2004, but it's even got "Godspeed You, Black Emperor" on it. but but it was what I was listening to at the time. It was a time when British Asian culture had a brief peak. For a while in the 1990s, to be Irish was very fashionable, very briefly. Then British Asian became very fashionable, very prominent in popular culture, and faded away again. So a lot of the music I was listening to was probably British Asian music rather than Indian music, because it was harder to get. Now it's much easier. We have Spotify. We can find music from anywhere in the world. So
So to pick on something that you said earlier, and that's true of science fiction across, that there is no a future. There are multiple futures, and the world of River of Gods is just one of them. So here's where I'll just ask you to get back into a sort of futurological writer mode and ask you, India 2047, the River of Gods India is one India possible. What are the other threads that you perhaps could have followed which would have led to a different India? I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of them.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. I made notes. That's why my bag is here in case I forget. I have to look up my notes. I think my thinking about this was like Kim Stanley Robinson's California trilogy, the Orange County trilogy. He's a great U.S. science fiction writer, and he wrote three different versions of future Orange County. One was a dystopia, one was a utopia, and one was somewhere in between. And kind of my thinking kind of followed that kind of path. The worst. I'll start with the worst first, which is basically ecocide. That yeah, that with climate change, with rapid urbanization, with water resource depletion, with aquifers being mined out, and with no change to the current capitalist system, that basically, well, the north of India collapses ecologically, which is not a very happy future, but it's a possible one. It, it's not one I think anyone needs to spend any time in. Constant water wars, oxygen rationing, health rationing, massive food dependency. It is possible. It's possible in any country by 2047, because it's not that climate change is coming. Climate change is here. Get used to it. Yeah, we did this. Now we have to try and find. We can't prevent it. All we can do is try and find ways of undoing what we have done. So that's one extreme version, which is
Now let's go here, please. We could do with some of that.
yeah. I had a few thoughts about kind of technocratic India, where technology becomes more and more prevalent and people allow it to take more and more control of their lives. And this isn't unique to India, but it's where I just come from China, where they have a system called social credits. Has anyone heard of this? Yeah, be afraid to be very afraid. It's basically the state keeps an eye on what you spend your money on and what you do, who your friends are, who you talk to, and basically you have privileges removed and your freedoms restricted the lower your social credit score.
That's the nightmare scenario
It's
of
the nightmare scenario.
Big Brother meets Big Data.
Yep, Big Brother meets Big. Yeah, and that is the thing. I mean, technocratic solutions always involve use of data. Do not ever give your data away because they may not use it against you today, but they may tomorrow, or they may use it against your children. The original version of the Chinese social credit model is even more pernicious. And it's not that the state keeps an eye on you, it's your neighbors keep an eye on you, and your neighbors police you. In a sense, it's the community polices people who live in the community, and that's kind of a rather and that's kind of how things like Twitter work as well. It's a self-policing community where if you step out of line, the community jumps on you ferociously, and in some ways that's slightly more scary than the state keeping an eye on you. Is that you can no longer trust your neighbors. I was reading a thing this morning in the paper, the Apple credit card. Anyone seen this story? Yeah, the shiny new fabulous Apple credit card. It's judged by algorithm. You apply for your credit card, the algorithm says yes. There's a British comedy show way back, about 20 years ago, got this right with the line, the computer says no. It's used all the time. It's very useful, the computer says no. But the thing about the Apple credit card is that the algorithm awards men 10 times more credit limit than women. Even if the woman earns more money, has a better credit score, the Apple credit card algorithm says men get 10 to 20 times the credit limit that women do. So there's a black box in there that cannot be argued with, and its assessments cannot be judged either. And I fear we're moving towards a technocratic state where algorithms judge everything that humans do, and we have no way of assessing its judgments, questioning the process, or even knowing how it makes those judgments. So that's my second one, kind of the black box future.
And this, so you said one extreme is the water wars,
Yeah, yeah,
etc., and then you went to the technocratic future.
Yeah.
And the technocratic future is the happy version.
No, it's not the
I
happy
mean-
version. This is the happy version. There's a movement in science fiction called solar punk. Some of you may have heard of, and it's yep. Basically, it's a lot of writers are tired of grim futures and dystopias and say, well, let's actually assume that people can work together, that people can collaborate, that we can invent a human scale future that's solar powered. And by God, India is a country that could be completely solar powered. The amount of access you have to solar energy is phenomenal. I think it takes direction from the top or on a state level. But you could easily shift to a solar economy very, very easily. You could easily re-green water sources and protect aquifers from over-extraction. This can be done, yeah. And the solar punk version, it's community-based, it's ecological, there's a lot of biotechnology, there's a lot of appropriate technology. It uses computers in human-facing ways, that allow people control over computer decisions and computer algorithms. It's solar powered, it's green, and it's inventive because ideas in a solar punk future bubble up from the bottom and don't come down from the top. And so, that is the positive future.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
Okay, so we'll take a couple of quick questions. Keep your questions to the subject of the panel and and not a comment.
Yeah, anyone says
Yeah.
this is a comment.
Good morning. Hi, and just a quick one. Now, Facebook, Google, Fitbit. I mean, like, where is it going to end? I mean, like, we are now become slaves to all of this.
Well, but that's future too. That's the system where we all end up policing each other. There's a simple solution: is switch off Facebook. Don't do Facebook. I've never done Facebook because of those social policing aspects to it. I do a tiny bit of Twitter. It's usually kind of silly jokes, things I see in the news, comments, stuff about this festival because I'm here. But I think the thing about social media. There's social media creep. It creeps up on you. It finds more things for you to do with it because it wants to become the primary mode of communication in your life. And I think it's incumbent on us to find ways around that. It can be absolutely fantastic. It can be a very good thing. I do quite a lot of work in amateur theatre, and we all communicate by WhatsApp. It's fantastic for that. We share silly stories on WhatsApp. But for us, the thing is the theatre. It's not the WhatsApp application. Question social media and never assume it's a good
The
thing.
gentleman there has one last question. We are
Yeah.
trying sort of.
So you talked about solar energy, right? So there is a study on that there is a lot of waste generated as a result of solar cells. I forgot the name of the book. It was something like Green Illusions or something like that, which was banned in the US. And I went through the book. Actually, I got a copy somehow. It very clearly describes the effect of solar cells and the waste generated. If not now, in the next 30 to 40 years, if we install today, 30 to 40 years later, we might have waste which are very dangerous than even carbon monoxide. And
Yeah. So what's the question?
so the question is, what is the solution? I mean, even though it appears very good right now,
There are issues with disposing of solar cells. There's lots of nasty chemicals and elements in them. I'm not a futurist. I'm a fictionist, and they are different disciplines. Fiction is about the effect on people, on their lives and their relationships. I still think never let the best get in the way of the good. I think if we hold out for a perfect solution, we'll have burned the planet, basically to a skull. All technologies are stopgaps. So maybe 30 years of solar power until we develop fusion. I'm going on a tour of a fusion facility actually just after Christmas this year, which is very exciting. I mean, it's always moving from one technology to another, but I think the primary thing is that we move from fossil fuels to electricity. I mean, eventually, over hundreds of thousands of years, the Earth will heat up from all the waste heat that we're dumping out of our machinery. Yes, there's a long-term problem to any form of technology which is waste heat, but it's all about moving toward. It's always about the next 20 to 30 years. We go this far, then we've developed the next thing that comes along. Solar and wind. In the UK, we had a week in the UK, and we have no sun out there. We have no sun at all. But we powered the entire country for no, it wasn't. It was 3 days. For 3 days on renewable power, and renewable power alone, wind and solar. It can be done in a cloudy place like Ireland as well. I think the thing is, the search for a perfect solution will get in the way of the good solution which we can apply right now.